Can corporations run the world? Is that where we're headed? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Woke corporations. It's been a topic of discussion for a couple years now, and anywhere you look in America, you can see businesses trying to tell free American citizens how to live their lives. Instead of having citizens vote for legislators who represent their wills as based on the Constitution and principles of limited government, instead of having Americans vote for these types in offices, we are now having sort of a quasi-government of business executives telling us how to behave, what we should do, what's right, what's wrong, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. Woke corporatism is running America, it seems. And is this the direction of the brave new world? Before I get into all that, and more importantly, before I get into what we can do to fight all that, I want to quickly mention that if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. It is the online platform for your faith-based podcast. Bold and Blunt is among its offerings, so go there, check it out. You can also get Bold and Blunt, of course, at washingtontimes.com, where you can subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It contains all my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, giving you the keys to fight the far leftists with solid bullet points, and containing as well my twice-weekly Bold and Blunt podcasts that come out Tuesday and Thursdays. But if you just want the podcast, you can get Bold and Blunt anywhere podcasts are offered. CEOs thinking that they run the world. Listen to this. I want to read from this Time article, this Time commentary written by Alan Murray, May 19th of this year. Murray is the CEO of Fortune Media, and he is also author of a new book called Tomorrow's Capitalist, My Search for the Soul of Business. Haven't read the book, but read this Time piece and thought it was a good platform for discussions. It lays out all the arguments, basically, that woke corporatism brings. Can CEOs run the world, and will the world allow them to? That's how this piece opens. That has become a central question of our times as leaders of big business step up to address some of society's most pressing problems. Consider, still reading from Murray's piece, a majority of Fortune 500 CEOs, according to Fortune's polling, have now committed to or are planning to commit to the UN goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner. Combating climate change, a complex undertaking once seen as primarily a government challenge, has moved solidly into the C-suite, into the corporate world, that is to say. Yes, it has. He's right. It has become a matter for businesses to deal with instead of government. You know why? Because government doesn't have the will of the people behind it to take the type of actions that the far leftists in government have been pushing for years, decades even. The people don't want total clampdowns on human development, on human activity, on human productivity and creativity. But many in the government, many on the far left of the environmental movement, want to basically shut down production, want to basically shut down all human activity. And because in America, this is still a of, by, and for the people form of governance, and the people have the final say, lawmakers and the executive, the president, have not been able to accomplish this new Green Deal type of vision. Barack Obama tried by himself. He got slapped back. He got slapped back in the courts. Leftists, Democrats in office have tried repeatedly to push through environmental agendas that the people don't want. And they've failed. They've failed repeatedly. So what What do? They turn to the corporate world. They send out their thugs into the streets to petition companies, the free market, private enterprise, to accomplish what they themselves can't accomplish in office insofar as pushing a green agenda. And so this is why, as he writes in his piece, as Alan Murray writes in his piece, that combating climate change has moved solidly into the C-suite. Going on from his piece, most large companies have set clear targets for diversity within their own organizations, and many are engaged in efforts to promote social justice beyond their corporate boundaries. Training also has become a mantra at many of the best companies, not just to upskill existing workers, but to increase social mobility and reduce inequality in society at large. Again, companies have picked up this narrative, this social justice narrative. This is me speaking now, not Murray. Companies have stepped in to accomplish what the far left has not been able to accomplish legislatively. By and large, the social justice agenda that Democrats want, that Democrats have been pushing, which is more akin to socialism and communism and Marxism, by and large, people in America don't want it. They don't want a redistribution of wealth scheme that takes from hardworking Americans to give to those in America who simply don't want to work as hard, but who sit at home and cry that they were born into circumstances that have put them at massive disadvantage from the rest of the people in America, which in a way may or may be true. But the deception here is that they don't have the same opportunity as everyone else in America to better their lives on their own. I'm sick and tired of the left painting rich people as if they are automatically born with silver spoons in their mouths, and because they are rich, that automatically means they're fat cat Wall Street executives who are simply lazy, simply scarfing off the hard-working peons in America who are downtrodden. That type of narrative doesn't play in America because in America we have a free market system where you, no matter what your background, no matter what your financial situation, no matter what your economic realities, no matter what your education level, no matter what circumstances from which you were born and raised, you can achieve the American dream. You can work hard. You can get an education. You can rise above your sad and sorry circumstances if that's what you were born into. You can achieve great things in this country. But the left wants it believed that if you're rich, you're only rich because you stole from the labor of those that you employ, of those whom you employ. It's such a Karl Marxist way of looking at things, and that kind of belief does not belong in America, and yet this is what the left sells. And sad to say, this is what woke corporate America has bought into. Back to this piece by Murray. Perhaps most dramatically, CEOs this year, this is May 2022 when he wrote this, moved into a lead role in geopolitics. Corporations have become the frontline troops in the effort to roll back Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, with hundreds voluntarily cutting or ending their businesses in Russia. Well, let me sidestep again from this piece. Where were these corporations all these years of doing business with China, with human rights abusing China, with one-child policy China, with communist China? All of a sudden, these corporations found a soul when it comes to Russia, when it comes to Putin. And yet these same businesses will happily jump into bed with China. Again, these are businesses acting as if they are duly elected political leaders, and they're not. And that's the danger of having woke corporate executives run policy and agenda in America. They care less about the Constitution and less about individual rights, and far, far less about any kind of notion of God-given rights than they do about padding their pockets. And they say, woke corporate executives say, that what they're doing with their wokeness is showing concern for the downtrodden, showing concern for American ideals of social justice and equality. But it's really the opposite. What they're doing is elevating the far leftist agenda that has not been able to be pushed through legislatively because the duly elected public servants don't have the backing of the people they represent and who pay their salaries. So corporations have happily stepped in, partnered with the likes of the World Economic Forum, which happily has a great reset that is shifting the world's economies, including America, away from a free market system, away from shareholder capitalism where businesses are in business to make a buck, toward stakeholder capitalism where businesses are in business to promote social justice and, yes, also make a buck, but more often than not shove social justice causes down the throats of consumers who didn't want the social justice causes. Otherwise, they would have elected politicians to bring about the social justice causes. So here's the big question. What do you do about it? How do you fight? And my guest today actually runs an organization that will help patriotic American citizens. Yes, patriotic American citizens who believe in the patriotic ideals of America, such as rights come from God, not government, and individualism rules over government will, and yes, over corporate will, over the wills of corporate executives. My guest today runs an organization that will help these patriotic Americans fight back this corporate wokeism. It is called Second Vote, and that's the number 2, NDVOTE.com. Her name is Rebecca Hatfield, and she's on Bold and Blunt to discuss how you as a patriotic American can fight against this far left agenda being shoved down your throat by businesses. Rebecca, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Tell people about Second Vote, which is the organization that you are president of.
Okay, the Second Vote has been around for 10 years, and we're a nonprofit conservative watchdog organization. We're centered on Judeo-Christian and American patriotic values. Essentially, we're a research and consumer engagement firm. So our mission is to empower the consumer to make the very best choices they can and shop their values, because your first vote is at the ballot box, but your second vote is with your wallet. And those are votes that you can take every single day with your choices of your purchases.
I love the concept of your organization because in this day and age of woke corporations, especially as we're seeing more and more during Pride Month that we're in right now, right? It's getting crazy out there. So if you're someone with Judeo-Christian values, if you're a Christian conservative in this country, it's very difficult to shop at places that don't support things that you actually oppose.
Absolutely. It is getting more and more difficult to shop and live in this culture as well, because it is absolutely inundated with this pride culture of anything goes, and we have to have this absolutely shoved down our throat, and we're to accept it and embrace it and adopt it, and that is absolutely what we do not want to do.
So your group also exposes some of the far left viewpoints being pushed by organizations in America. What are some of the worst offenders?
Well, we have quite a few bad actors. Actually, let me give you some stats, and these are somewhat staggering, but I don't want to lose hope, because there are things that we can do, because in a capitalistic type environment system, the consumers are the guardrails. We're the ones that we have to stop and say, hey, enough is enough, corporations, stores, retailers. We don't like this. So it's our voices, our second votes that are going to be heard when we collectively say we aren't going to take this anymore. So let me give you some stats. First of all, we have about 1,800 scored entities that are available, and 1,000 scored that are not available, that are just not consumer, corporations, and then 2,000 nonprofits that will be eventually available. So out of that population, 17% of that population score above a 3. Now, a 3 would be neutral. That would be an entity that is just doing their business. They don't focus on politics. They're just manufacturing or doing their goods and services, and we celebrate the 3s. Those are good entities. Now, if they do, donate to good causes, we celebrate those as well. But if they're just doing their business, that's great. That's what we want them to do.
Right.
So 17% of that population is at above a 3, okay? So 26% of that population is at a 3, and then 57%, that's a large percentage, is below a 3. So that would mean that out of all that group, the majority lean left. That puts our mean score across the entire population at a 2.44, where we would like everybody to be at a 3 or above. So this is the work that we have to do. This lays the groundwork. This gives the basis where we have to be. So let me give you some entities that we, right off the bat, would like to see do better. We've got Amazon at a 1.28. We've got Whole Foods at a 1.81. Starbucks, 1.73. A Google, 1. And we know why. And Apple at a 2.32. Netflix, 1.75. Delta Airlines, 1.92. Southwest is not, it's getting there. It's at a 2.46, so it's not too bad. It has a little ways to go, but still, So there are some alternatives that we can look at, and they're few and far between, but we can still celebrate those and choose those over the bad actors. Now, we don't advocate boycotts. What we do is we give you the information, and then we leave it up to the consumer to decide what they want to do with that information.
I think in principle, what you do resonates and is actually applauded by many in America who are fed up with this culture, the moral degradations and the woke corporations. But it gets very difficult. So say you want to do home improvements, right? Mm-hmm.
Right.
I know Home Depot and Lowe's, both of the major home improvements big box stores, are part of the don't shop there crowd for Christian conservatives. So it becomes a little bit sticky if you want to do certain things in America, doesn't it? Or can you show me that there are options to shop at for pretty much all the most popular stores in America?
Well, what our approach is that's why Second Vote exists. You can go and search. If you look on Second Vote, actually Home Depot scores a 3.54.
Oh, okay.
I know a lot of people have a really hard time with that score, but the reason is, and when you subscribe to our Investor Council level, you get to see the research. You can really dig deep and find out why. Because they do donate to Salvation Army, which is a pro-life organization, and we consider life to be the highest issue. We have 6 issues that we score on, and it's a geometric weighted average score. So life being our highest issue, basic freedoms is another issue, Second Amendment, civil society, education, and environment. But life is the one that we give the heaviest weight to, because if you take a life, that counts heavier, because you can't redeem that. You cannot give that back. You can't make it up. You can't undo that.
Right.
So when an organization gives to a pro-life entity, we want to applaud them extra. We want to show thank you again and again, and Do that over again. Keep doing that. That's exactly what we want to do. So that's why Home Depot got an extra or heavier score for the life count vote that they got, or point that they got. So because of their donation to pro-life organizations, their score is going to be higher than Lowe's. Now, I know that they do other things that we don't like, and we score them for that, but their score is 3.54, which is not a bad score. But if you still do not want to choose Home Depot, you have Ace Hardware. They're a 3.61. So there are other options, and we always advise shop local. Shop local, give local, love local. Choose your local hardware stores. Choose your local lumber suppliers right there in your area. Choose local if you do not want to choose Lowe's or Home Depot.
And you know, that advisement about choosing local, great as it is, it's actually taken a hit because in the last couple of years, with all those smaller businesses that have closed around the nation due to the coronavirus forced shutdowns by government, that has really elevated the big box retailers, the corporate entities, and left out a lot of these mom and pop shops that you would advise shopping at in the cold.
Absolutely, and I can't help but just from observation, it looks by design. It looks like these larger entities came out on top, where the smaller mom and pop stores, like you said, have just crumbled under COVID. It seems almost like by design how that the large big box corporations entities have remained intact or gotten stronger, but these smaller local entities have either folded or gotten weaker or still struggling. So take, for instance, Tractor Supply. They're doing great. They're just growing and growing, but the feed and seeds, the local co-ops, a lot of them are going out of business. They're hard to find now.
So I'm on your website right now, Second Vote, and I haven't had opportunity to actually scroll through and do all the research yet. But if I want to look up specific businesses in my community, can I do that and find out the rating?
You can go and look and see if they're there, and if that company is not, you can go and ask for it to be scored. We have right now 1,800 that are scored and available. But because of the time that it is required to do the extensive research that we do, we haven't gotten to everyone. So if you go to the search function on the landing page, you can search by keyword or by the industry, or you can also search by score. Then that will bring up, if the entity is scored, it'll bring up that company.
Okay. Now, if I'm a Coke hound, a Coca-Cola hound, what do I do about that? Coke versus Pepsi versus no-name brand?
Yes, Coca-Cola is a 1. I am so sorry to tell you that, but they do not score well. Pepsi is a 1.09. So I don't know how you would want to handle that. That, again, we don't call for boycott. What we would do is just give you the information and let you make that decision of how you would like to make your choices.
Okay. And Nike, I assume, is very low scored, or?
Yes, 1.59 for Nike.
So where would you shop then? Where would you shop if you wanted clothing or shoes that Nike would produce? Where would be a better organization to look at?
Okay, well, there are a few options. We've looked at Reebok. We've looked at Adidas. Some of those are, just the lesser of the evils.
Right.
I know that Belk scores pretty well. Now, again, the store, there's a difference between the retailer and then the brand that they carry. Eventually, what we would like to do, what we're planning to do, not just what we'd like to do, what we have plans to do, is to have an app so that the consumer can scan the UPC code, and they will be able to look at that particular food item or clothing item and tell which of these two items are more liberal or more conservative. Right now, we're doing retail entities, and then we're going to go down to dive deeper into the actual brands. That's in the future. That requires a lot more, basically more tech, more data, more statistics. So that's coming. It's coming. Almost in place. It's in the works. So what we do have right now, we do have a good bit of, the retailers in place. We have just about to launch a plug-in that you could put on your browser, so that as you're scrolling, searching, whatever you're doing online, if one of the retailers or companies that we have scored comes up while you're searching, that company's score will pop up. It'll show it. It'll highlight. So that is going to be an exciting tool for consumers, that it will just automatically show the second vote score as they're searching the web.
Well, I'm looking at your restaurant section right now. It's fascinating. So Captain D's scores 3. Dairy Queen, unfortunately, is 2.16. Longhorn Steakhouse 1.36.
Yes.
That's pretty low.
I know. My husband and I went there every Friday night for date night until we learned that. And then it was like, we can't do it. We just can't.
Panera Bread, that's one of my favorites, only 2.52, and there are a few substitutes for Panera. That's sad. But the Cheesecake Factory, 3.21, and In-N-Out Burger, 4.07. That's a high score.
It is. Did you see who's the highest?
No. Who is?
Waffle House.
Really?
4.14. Waffle House. Shout out to Waffle House. Yes, good old American greasy food wins. Bacon wins.
So are these scores, like you were explaining a minute ago, you're mostly concerned with pro-life. Are these scores greatly influenced by the pro-life stance, or is...
They are greatly influenced by the pro-life stance.
Okay.
1.5 times. So if a company donates money to a pro-life entity, their score is going to be heavily increased by that. Now, the other scores, basic freedoms, and then Second Amendment, civil safe society, education, and then environment. Environment is the lowest weighted score. We do care about environment. We care about good stewardship. We care about good policies. But what we don't want to see is a globalist type mindset. We don't want to see a heavy ESG program in place. We don't want to see support of a carbon tax or a Paris Climate Agreement, that type of thing. Those things would be a negative hit on their score.
Oh, and entertainment is slim pickings. The Cartoon Network only gets a 1. That's pretty bad, since they're in the business of entertaining kids.
Right, but does this really surprise you? I mean, would Hollywood really be the place to go to find high scores?
No, you're right. Vizio Entertainment has a 3, so that one seems to be the highest, or PBS, but I'm not familiar with Vizio.
Okay, so the highest right now would be Hershey Family Entertainment. That would be like Dollywood. And also Six Flags is a 4.10. So those are two that are pretty. Ark Encounters 3.72, SeaWorld 3.44. So these are, those are some good options. This is fascinating and fun.
Yeah. I would recommend that everybody go to this site, Second Vote, and it's the number 2 ndvote.com, and check it out, because it's a little bit engrossing, and it's kind of addicting looking at this stuff. But
let me leave you with the viewers with 3 things, or listeners 3 things. Okay, first of all, they need to be informed. Go to Second Vote, like you just said. Educate yourself. Take action. If you shop your values, but also let the corporations you want to shop at, but you don't like what they're doing, let them hear from you. Let's all go to Second Vote. You can click on a link and call them or email them directly and say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. Individually, we don't have as much voice as we do collectively. So if we all come together, we can sound so much louder and tell them, we don't like this. We don't want this. Third thing to do is register and vote. That's where the change really happens. So vote with your wallet, vote with your ballot, and then also just keep getting informed.
That's excellent advice, and I appreciate you stepping in and wrapping this up, because I was getting a little distracted going through your website. So, Rebecca Hatfield, thank you so much for coming on Bold and Blunt. Great work that your organization is doing, and I really do hope listeners go to the website and check it out. It's fascinating and informative.
Thank you so much for your time, Cheryl. I enjoyed it.
So, once again, I ask you, can CEOs run the world? Will the world allow them to? That's to quote from Alan Murray from the beginning of Bold and Blunt from Time, once again. I don't think CEOs should run the world. I don't think I want to put my individual liberties in the hands of CEOs to decide. And you shouldn't either. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, or anywhere podcasts are offered. And a quick mention of my latest book, Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. You can get it anywhere books are offered for sale, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, of course, or my website, CherylChumley.com. In it, I describe some of the behind-scenes agendas of these businesses and global entities to crumble capitalism, to cripple the free market system, and to completely abolish the Constitution. Check it out. Pick up your copy today. And thank you for listening. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.